There is a warm, amber glow that remains long after the fire of the struggle has gone out. We tell the stories of hope and warmth that survive even the coldest winters of life. Hit subscribe today and keep the glow of great storytelling alive in your heart.
My brother stood in the doorway of my duplex, wearing the Buffalo Bills jersey I bought him for Christmas, holding a cup of coffee like he owned the place. Because he had decided he did. He looked at me the way people look at a stray dog that wandered onto their porch. Inconvenient, but not dangerous. Not yet. Go find a hotel for a few nights, he said. Give us some space to sort things out. I stood on the front step with my carry-on bag and my laptop case and 6 years of work behind me, and I said, "Sort what out?" He shrugged. The paperwork for my house. He smiled, sipped his coffee, and closed the door. Before I tell you how I dismantled everything they built on my name, I want to ask you something. Drop it in the comments. What is the most outrageous thing a family member has ever done under the excuse of keeping things in the family? I read every single one. I checked into a Marriott 4 blocks from the duplex I had bought with 6 years of weekend shifts, skipped vacations, and a diet that consisted mostly of store-brand peanut butter and black coffee. It was a clean room. Nice view of the highway. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall and tried to reconstruct how a 31-year-old woman with a deed in her name ends up locked out of her own property by her brother and a cup of coffee. I had to go back to the beginning to understand it. Not the obvious beginning, not the duplex. I had to go back to what my family actually is, which is not a family in the way most people mean that word. We are a hierarchy, and I am the bottom of it. My brother Derek is 4 years older than me and has been the center of the universe since the day he was born. Not because he earned it, because he needed it. Derek has always been the fragile one, the one with potential that never quite materialized, the one who was 6 months away from his big break for the entire decade of his 30s. My parents, Douglas and Patricia, invested everything in that potential. Their time, their attention, their retirement savings twice over. Every family dinner was a Derek status update. Every phone call circled back to whatever Derek needed, whatever Derek was building, whatever Derek had almost figured out. And then there was me. I was the one who figured it out. I put myself through nursing school working doubles at a diner. I graduated without debt because I never asked for a single dollar. I took a travel nursing contract at 24 and spent 3 years moving city to city, living cheap, saving hard, because I had a number in my head. A down payment number. A number that meant no one could ever tell me where to sleep. I hit that number at 28. I bought a duplex in Nashville for $740,000. 2 units, both rented, cash flowing from month 1. It was not glamorous. It was a 20-year-old building with a leaky gutter and tenants who paid on time but complained constantly. But it was mine. The deed had one name on it. My name, Clara Whitfield. My parents cried at the closing like I had won an Olympic medal. My father shook my hand with both of his. My mother said she was so proud. Derek texted a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. 8 months later, I signed a new travel contract in Phoenix. 14 months, good money. I needed someone to collect rent, handle minor repairs, field tenant calls. I could have hired a property manager and paid $300 a month. Instead, my father called me the night before my flight and asked if they could help. Save you the fees, Clara. We're right here. We have the time. It felt like the right thing to do. It felt like the moment the family started working the way families are supposed to. I had my attorney draft a limited power of attorney. The document was specific. It authorized my parents to collect rent, pay the utility bills tied to the building, and coordinate minor maintenance. Nothing else. My attorney underlined it twice during our call. This does not authorize any transfer of interest, she said. Any deed modification, any title change, any financing against the property. None of that. I told her I understood. My parents are not like that, I said. I was in Phoenix for 14 months. Everything ran fine, or seemed to. Rent hit my account. Repairs happened. My mother texted photos of the new gutters. My father sent a spreadsheet every month. Color-coded, very neat. I felt guilty for ever doubting them. I felt like maybe the family I always wanted was quietly assembling itself while I was busy working. I flew home in March. My plan was to spend 2 weeks, check on the property, take my parents to dinner, maybe stay in the lower unit since the tenant had just moved out. That was the unit I always kept as my backup plan. My name, my deed, my fallback. Derek opened the door. The hotel room was quiet and very cold, and I sat in it for 4 hours trying to decide if I was overreacting. I called my mother. She said it was complicated and she needed me to just be patient and she would explain everything. I called my father. He said Derek had put a lot of work into the property while I was gone and he deserved to see some of that returned. I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Clara, let's not do this over the phone." The next morning, I drove to the county recorder's office and paid $2 to pull the title history on my property. I want you to understand what I saw on that printout. I want you to feel what it felt like to sit in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights holding a piece of paper that made no sense, because the deed on file was not the deed I signed at closing. There had been a new instrument recorded 11 months ago, 9 weeks after I left for Phoenix. A deed of gift, signed in my name, conveying a 50% ownership interest in the property to Derek James Whitfield, my signature, my notary stamp, my property. 50% gone to my brother while I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Phoenix, eating meal prepared chicken and wiring money back to cover repairs. I sat in that plastic chair for a long time. Then I drove to the hotel. I did not call Derek. I did not call my parents. I did not go back to the house. I checked in for another 3 nights, ordered room service I could not taste, and called my attorney in Nashville. Her name is Catherine. She has been practicing real estate law for 22 years, and she has the voice of someone who has seen everything and is surprised by none of it. I read her the instrument number. She pulled it up while I was on the phone. Silence. Then, "Clara, did you sign this?" "No, I was in Phoenix. I have 14 months of time-stamped records." Another silence, longer. "Okay," she said, "don't go to the house, don't call them, don't say a single word to anyone in your family until we talk tomorrow. Do you understand me?" I said yes. Catherine laid it out the next morning over black coffee in her office with the kind of precision that made me both grateful and nauseous. The deed of gift had been executed using the limited power of attorney I granted my parents. The notary on file had stamped it as a valid instrument. But there was a problem. A catastrophic, beautiful problem. The limited power of attorney I signed did not authorize property transfers. The language was explicit. Transfer of any ownership interest was specifically excluded. Any attorney reviewing the document would see immediately that the POA had been used far outside its granted scope. "That is not a clerical error," Catherine said. "That is fraud. Deed fraud, in fact. A felony in Tennessee." She leaned back. "And here is the issue," she said. "We can file a quiet title action and get the fraudulent deed voided. We will win, eventually. But eventually means 12 to 18 months. In the meantime, Derek has paper that says he owns 50%. He can file for partition. He can file for partition. He can tie up the property in litigation. He can make your life very expensive and very slow for a very long time. And your parents signed off on this, so you would essentially be suing your entire family simultaneously." I looked at my hands. I had 2 options. The legal path, which was slow and correct and would cost me more than I had saved in fees, or something else. "What's the something else?" I asked. Catherine looked at me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if they want a transaction, let's have a transaction, on my terms. With a camera in the room." She studied me for a moment. Then she set down her coffee. "Tell me what you're thinking." I went dark for 4 days. I did not contact my family. I watched Derek post on Instagram about deep cleaning the lower unit. I watched my mother like and comment heart emojis. I ate breakfast at the same diner every morning, and I thought about the 17-year-old version of myself washing dishes until her hands cracked because she refused to ask them for anything, and I thought about what she would want me to do. On the 5th morning, I called my mother from a number she didn't recognize. She picked up on the 2nd ring. When she realized it was me, her voice went warm and careful the way it always does when she is managing me. "Clara, sweetheart, I've been worried." I said, "Mom, I've been thinking. I'm tired. I've been fighting this in my head for a week and I don't want to lose my family over a building." She exhaled. I could feel her relief through the phone like a physical thing. I knew she thought she had won. I said, "Derek put time into that property. I was gone. I didn't realize how much he contributed. Maybe 50% is fair. Maybe this is actually the right outcome." She made a sound I had not heard her make toward me since I was a child. A soft, relieved sound, like I had finally stopped disappointing her. I said, "But I need to do this properly. For tax reasons, for my own protection, I need us to sit down with a notary and a real estate attorney and confirm the transfer in writing. A formal acknowledgement that Derek's interest is legitimate and settled, that the deed of gift was executed correctly." She hesitated for half a second and I pressed, Otherwise, the IRS could treat it as an undocumented gift and come after all of us. Do you want Derek dealing with a tax audit on top of everything? No, she said quickly. No, absolutely not. Let's do it properly. I called my father next and let him give me the same speech he had probably been rehearsing, about family and fairness and how Derek had really stepped up. I listened to the whole thing. I said, "You're right, Dad. I overreacted. Let's close this cleanly." He said, "That's my girl." While they were busy congratulating themselves, I was doing what I had been doing since the night I first sat in that hotel room. I was building the file. I had 14 months of Phoenix rental records, hotel receipts, utility bills, rideshare logs, bank statements with geographic data. I could prove I was not in Nashville on the date of that instrument. I was 1,600 miles away eating takeout Thai and working a 12-hour ER shift. But I didn't need to prove where I was. I needed them to prove something they couldn't. I pulled the original limited power of attorney document. I highlighted the exclusion language. I pulled the recorded deed of gift. I placed them side by side. Any first-year law student could see it. The POA did not authorize the transfer. The transfer happened anyway. Someone forged the application of that document to a purpose it explicitly did not cover. That someone was in my family and had been sleeping in my house for 11 months. I also pulled Derek's financial records. Not private ones, public ones. Court records. 3 years ago, Derek had filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Davidson County, reorganization plan, not discharge, but the filing required a complete asset declaration. In that declaration, Derek listed his assets as 1 laptop computer, 1 vehicle with negative equity and 0 real estate interests. He had sworn to a federal bankruptcy trustee that he owned nothing. Now he was claiming a 50% interest in a $740,000 property that he had never paid a dollar toward. You can be broke in bankruptcy court, or you can be a property owner at the county recorder's office. You cannot be both at the same time without explaining the gap. And the gap here was a felony. I forwarded everything to Catherine with a message that said, "Set the room, bring the camera, I'm done waiting." Catherine's conference room was on the 14th floor with a view of the river. It was the kind of room where the furniture is heavier than your car and the silence costs $250 an hour. I arrived 20 minutes early. Catherine was already there with a paralegal, a court reporter named Susan who had her machine set up in the corner, and a videographer who adjusted the tripod angle twice without being asked. Catherine had positioned an extra chair at the far end of the table, angled toward the camera. She knew what she was doing. My parents arrived first. My father in his good flannel, the one he wears to church and medical appointments. My mother in a blouse I recognized because I had given it to her for her birthday 2 years ago. Derek came in behind them in a button-down that was slightly too small across the shoulders, carrying the same entitled energy he had carried to my front door. He looked around the room and seemed to find it impressive. He sat down without asking where to sit. No one said hello to me. My father nodded. My mother gave me a careful smile. Derek looked at his phone. Catherine introduced herself, the court reporter, the videographer. She explained that this was a formal deposition of facts to establish the legitimacy and legal basis of the property transfer for title insurance purposes, and that everything would be transcribed and recorded for the official record. My father nodded like this was routine. Derek said, "Fine, let's get it done." Susan began typing. Catherine set the acknowledgement document on the table. She slid it toward Derek. It was a 2-page document confirming that the deed of gift was a legitimate voluntary transfer, that Derek had provided consideration in the form of property management services, and that the transfer was executed within the scope of the grantor's authorized agent. Simple, clean, official. Before we proceed, Catherine said, I am required to inform all parties that this is a sworn instrument. Signing under false pretenses constitutes perjury. Do each of you understand and confirm that the statements you are about to affirm are true to the best of your knowledge? My father said, yes. My mother said, of course. Derek picked up the pen. Catherine said, one additional preliminary matter. She did not raise her voice. She never raised her voice once in that entire room. She said, Mr. A.H.A. Whitfield, can you confirm for the record that you have held a valid legal interest in this property since the date of the deed instrument approximately 11 months ago? Derek said, that's correct. And can you confirm that this interest was not in existence prior to that date? That prior to that instrument, you held no ownership interest in this property? Correct, Derek said. Catherine nodded. She reached into the folder beside her and placed a document on the table. It was his Chapter 13 bankruptcy filing. She turned to the asset schedule page, the one where he had sworn he owned nothing. She placed it directly next to the acknowledgement he was about to sign. Mr. Whitfield, she said, in your bankruptcy filing 3 years ago, you declared 0 real estate interests under penalty of perjury to a federal trustee. She paused and let the room sit in silence. If you sign this acknowledgement today confirming that your interest in this property has existed for 11 months, you are simultaneously confirming that your bankruptcy filing was inaccurate. Because 11 months ago falls within the post-filing period during which you were still under trustee supervision, the room changed. I watched it happen the way you watch weather roll in across open water. My mother's hand went still. My father's jaw tightened. Derek stopped looking at the pen and started looking at Catherine, then at me, then at the camera, in that order, with the slow, terrible comprehension of someone realizing they have walked into a room with no exit. He said, "It was a gift. Property given to me," Catherine said after the bankruptcy discharge. He paused. "Yes." She set another document on the table. She didn't slam it. She placed it quietly, which was worse. She said, "The discharge was finalized 14 months ago. The instrument is dated 11 months ago. The instrument is dated 11 months ago. Which means if this transfer is legitimate, you received a substantial asset within the post-discharge monitoring period and did not report it to the trustee as required. Under federal bankruptcy law, that is a criminal violation. We are talking about a property valued at half of $740,000. That is a $370,000 concealed asset." Derek pushed back his chair. He said, "We can explain this." Catherine said, "Please do. The record is running." My father stood up. He said, "Catherine, with all due respect, this is a family matter and I don't think you understand." Catherine said, "Mr. Whitfield, I understand bankruptcy law, deed fraud statutes, and the scope of the limited power of attorney your daughter signed, which I drafted, which explicitly and unambiguously excludes the transfer of any ownership interest." She slid the original POA across the table and placed it next to the deed of gift. She said, "The instrument you filed was executed outside the granted authority of this document. That is not a paperwork error. That is fraud, and I am an officer of the court." My mother said, "Clara." She used the voice, the soft voice, the one that had always worked before. She said, "Clara, we did this for the family. Derek needed a foundation. He needed something to build on. You have so much and he has struggled so much, and we thought if we just—" I said, "You thought if you just signed my name on a deed while I was 1,600 miles away." She flinched. I did not raise my voice. I had promised myself I would not. I said, "I have 14 months of documentation placing me in Phoenix. I have a notary whose seal is on that instrument who is going to be asked to explain how they witnessed my signature when I was not in the state. I have the original PO with language that a first-year law student could read. And I have a bankruptcy filing where Derek swore to the federal government that he owned nothing, which was true because he didn't, because I never gave him anything." Derek said, "You're going to destroy this family over a house." I looked at him for a long moment. I had looked at him my whole life and always seen potential. The older brother. The one who's supposed to figure it out first. I said, "I'm not destroying anything. You built this. You used my name, my property, and my absence to build it. I just came home." He lurched forward across the table. He said, "Give me that," reaching for the bankruptcy document. The videographer took a small step back and kept filming. Catherine put her hand flat on the document. She said, "That is evidence of a felony. I cannot allow you to remove it." My father said, "What does that mean? What happens now?" Catherine said, "It means I have a professional obligation to report evidence of fraud to the appropriate authorities." She said it the way a doctor tells you what happens next after a diagnosis. Not unkind, not cruel, just factual and final. She said, "The title company that recorded this instrument will be notified. The bankruptcy trustee for the Middle District of Tennessee will receive a copy of this recording and the supporting documents. The notary on file will be contacted by the state licensing board, and law enforcement will likely want to speak with everyone in this room except my client." My mother covered her mouth with both hands. My father sat down slowly like his knees had made a decision before the rest of him. Derek looked at me and I saw the thing I had always been afraid to see in his face, which was that he had never once believed I deserved what I had. That somewhere underneath all the family dinners and the Christmas jerseys and the thumbs-up emojis, he had always thought the balance was wrong. That I had too much and he had too little, and the universe had made an error that someone needed to correct. He looked at me like I had stolen something from him by working for it. He said, "You set us up." I said, "You signed a fraudulent deed on a property with my name on it. All I did was ask you to explain it on camera." My father said, Clara, please. His voice broke on the second word. He said, we are your parents. Whatever happened, whatever mistakes were made, we are your parents. You cannot let them take everything. We will lose the house. We will lose everything. His eyes were wet. He looked old in a way I had not noticed before, and I felt the pull of it, the same pull I had felt my entire life, the gravitational field of his need. Please, he said, we can fix it. Tell the lawyer to stop. We'll make it right. We'll put it back the way it was. Just stop this now. I said, the filing went out this morning. I looked at Catherine and she nodded. I had authorized it before they walked through the door. There was nothing left to stop. I picked up my jacket from the back of my chair. I said, I paid for a surgery. I paid for 2 DUI lawyers. I pay for a roof inspection and a furnace replacement and gutters I have never seen in person. I gave you access to the only financial security I have ever built, and you used it to take the last thing I had that was mine. I said it quietly. I said, I am not doing this to punish you. I am doing this because the only way to stop a leak is to fix the pipe. My father said, Clara, I said, you taught me that family means sacrifice. You were right. I am sacrificing you to save myself. I don't think you're evil. I think you love Derek so much that you stopped being able to see me as a person with something worth protecting. I said, that's not something I can fix for you. That's something you have to live with. I walked to the door. Behind me, I heard my mother start to cry and Derek say something sharp and low that I didn't catch. I didn't turn around. The elevator opened and I stepped in and the doors closed and I stood in the mirrored box looking at myself. I looked the same. I had expected to look different. I took a breath and felt it fill my lungs all the way to the bottom for the first time in what felt like a year. The fallout was swift and ugly and I watched most of it from a distance. The bankruptcy trustee in Nashville moved fast. Derek's post-discharge period had never formally closed because of procedural delays, and the concealed asset triggered an immediate reopening. His discharge was vacated. The debt he had erased came back with interest and penalties. The trustee filed a motion to recover the property interest as an improperly concealed asset, which effectively voided the deed of gift from the other direction, separate from my own quiet title action. The notary who stamped the instrument lost her license and is facing her own investigation. My parents were interviewed twice by a federal investigator, and my father was charged as an accessory to the deed fraud. His attorney negotiated it down, but the process took 8 months and cost them the retirement savings they had not already spent on Derek. Derek was charged with deed fraud and bankruptcy fraud simultaneously. He took a plea, probation, restitution, and a felony on his record that will follow him for the rest of his career. I did not go back to the duplex while any of that was happening. I let Catherine handle the quiet title action, which was resolved in 4 months once the fraudulent instrument was voided from both directions. The property reverted to my name alone. Clean title. No encumbrances. The tenants had stayed through everything and they sent me a card when it was over. That made me cry in a way that nothing else had. I hired a property manager. His name is Marcus and he sends me a spreadsheet every month that is not color-coded but is accurate. I paid $300 a month and I have not once regretted it. I am writing this from a city I moved to 6 months ago. I am not going to say which one. I changed my number. I am not on social media. My parents have my attorney's contact information if there is a genuine emergency, and she has instructions to use her judgment about what qualifies as one. I do not know what Derek is doing, and I have made peace with not knowing. People will tell you that you owe your family something just for existing, that the biological connection is a debt that never fully clears. I believed that for a long time. I worked extra shifts in that belief. I wired $50,000 in that belief. I handed over a power of attorney in that belief. What I have learned is that a belief that costs you everything without ever asking the same from anyone else is not a value. It is a vulnerability. And vulnerabilities do not become strengths by defending them. They become strengths when you finally decide they do not belong to everyone who shares your last name. I have a duplex. I have clean title. I have a property manager who sends spreadsheets. I have a city no one knows about and a number no one has and a morning routine that belongs entirely to me. I am 31 years old and I am, for the first time in my life, completely in the black. If this story made you think of someone in your own life, someone who has treated your success as a resource they're entitled to, I want to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments, and if you believe that protecting yourself is not the same as being cruel, hit subscribe. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere this time.